Welcome to Dialectic, episode 31 with Gabe Whaley. Gabe is the CEO and co-founder of MSCHF. MSCHF is hard to pin down. Depending on who you ask, it's a startup, a fashion brand, performance artist, cultural commentator, and a virality machine. There's probably a long list of other descriptions. Any given beholder might see them as too. Over the years, they've become a category of their own, and people will often describe MSCHF for X when talking about spectacle marketing or the viral drops they're known for. For nearly 6 years, they released a new drop every 2 weeks. A product, a website, an art piece, or something even weirder. You may have come across MSCHF by way of some of their most famous releases, stuff like the Big Red Boots, the time they cut up a Damien Hirst print and sold it for parts, the time they created 999 forgeries of a Warhol drawing, mixed them all together, and sold them all, and the Jesus shoes, the Nike Air Maxes they filled with holy water back in 2019 that were probably the first time MSCHF went supernova on the internet. I've known Gabe for years, and MSCHF and he are at an interesting turning point, I think. It made it a particularly interesting time to sit down with him and reflect on where they've been, what they've learned, how they do what they do, and where they might be going. I think any creative person and anyone who's interested in how the internet is changing us, our attention, and what we value will find Gabe's philosophy at the very least thought-provoking. He and the MSCHF team are keen to say that nothing is sacred, and they are definitely always finding new ways to be irreverent. And yet, this conversation made it even more clear to me how much they deeply care about the act of creativity and making sure to find new ways to stoke that flame and begin anew. As always, if you enjoy this episode, please give it a rating and or share it with a friend. Here's Gabe Whaley. All right, Gabe Whaley, we made it.
Oh, are we live?
Yeah.
All right, let's rock.
Thanks for making time.
Anytime.
And hustling back from the doomland of Tribeca.
I'm a menace on a city bike.
Yeah, it's the beautiful thing about 3/4 of the year in New York.
Right.
Winter comes and like everything is thrown off.
No, I'll do it in the winter too.
I'm not from the East Coast, so it's a great struggle. Okay, we are going to start with a line from Sean Monahan in the Made by MSCHF book describing you guys. He says, to the venture capitalist, MSCHF is a startup. To the sneakerhead, MSCHF is a brand. To the collector, MSCHF produces art. Virality is the only mutually intelligible language understood by all three. Well, that and money. There's two things that this kind of brings to mind for me. One is the notion, and it comes up in every time you guys have to talk about this, is that you're constantly playing with legibility and illegibility. Mm. And then the other is that maybe beyond spectacle, which is very obvious, I think the other thing that really stands out to me about you guys and your work is that you're playing with value, the idea of value and what we value and how we value the things we do. Something that itself can be kind of legible or illegible. And so my first question is, why value? Why is that such an interesting substrate that kind of runs across all this stuff? And how do you think about legibility, both with regard to that idea and more broadly, this whole container, what this thing is?
Real quick, can you clarify a little bit what you mean on legibility, illegibility?
Yeah, it's an idea that I've thought about a lot. One of my friends even brought up in the context of this podcast as I was pretty early on, and she's like, you are currently kind of illegible, meaning like it's not totally clear what the thing's about and like who the guests are and like what the pattern is.
Right.
And her point was there will be a time for legibility, but right now you're actually like kind of in the oven.
Yeah.
And to me, there are a few things at the level of scale and cultural impact as MSCHF that are constantly dipping in and out of legibility.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. So I'll start with the legibility, illegibility, and then we can talk about value. The way that we've internally described our practice with regards to being legible or not is, at least it used to be, the black box. What is the black box? The black box is this idea of we're not transparent. We do not tell people how we do things or why we do things. Are we trying to hide anything? Not necessarily. It's because the mystery lends more to the imagination than reality ever could. The second part to that, which is less thrilling, is that maybe we're kind of lazy. And it takes a lot of work to document and tell a story when, Why not create enough of a spark and put it in front of enough people so that they tell the story for you. And then they have conflicting stories, which will oppose one another. Some will create factions, different communities will form. And at the end of the day, you create this much larger spectacle that almost has nothing to do with the idea or mischief anymore. They have consumed the idea. They have become the idea. And I think in a lot of Mischief's best work, and most of the work that we've aspired to do, is how do you create this handoff to an audience and let them run with it and turn it into something else, that is their own. So I think there's an element of this black box. There's also this element of giving up control so that the meaning can be defined by that end audience, which selfishly is also a thrill to watch. Now, for the value part, I think when you look at a lot of our work, you see that we co-opt objects or systems that either define or comment on most people's daily lives, their relationships with objects, their relationships with technology, their relationships with people via technology. One thing that we've constantly said here is the only point of being a human is being able to eat, sleep, fuck, and flex on your neighbor, which some people have countered me on, but I think is pretty true. I think that's like a universal truth. It's always been that, and it always will be that. And that gives you a lot of good material, especially like the tail end of that statement. And, the funny thing about Mischief, and this is kind of what Sean was getting at, of like, we can put our tech startup hat on, we can put our footwear brand hat on, we can put our fine art hat on. We're really just a reflection of whatever is going on in any space at any given moment based on the project that we choose to do. And I think a lot of the work regarding this idea of value, it comes out because we're not creating paintings that live in a white wall gallery. We're actually taking objects and systems, twisting them, contorting them, and putting them back into the systems that we're critiquing. And so they are real. There are real interactions. And in order to interact, you must give up time or money or both. And so the value equation starts there, and then it sort of takes a life of its own.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about a kind of almost sacrifice in the consumption of a Mischief thing. And sacrifice can mean a lot of different things.
No, totally.
I interviewed Eugene Wei, who I think you've met earlier on the show, and one of the things he talked about is how sort of speculation is increasingly becoming kind of like more and more entrenched in what culture is, especially for young people. Obviously, in the case of sports betting and crypto and gambling, but even like dating apps, or like this sort of notion around living is like, why bother doing anything that's going to slowly compound? I should just sort of like put it all in black. And I'm curious if you've thought about that at all, to the extent that sort of plays into, it's an interesting cut on value at the very least in terms of how we value things.
Interesting cut on value, or just interesting statement on like the desperation that everyone's facing, and just kind of how not even like bleak, because we're past that. It's just like truly nihilistic at this point. It's like, you know what? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, why not? And maybe some people are actually kind of having fun and getting some joy out of this and finding some community around it, which is kind of cool. Still bleak, but kind of cool. And, I think we've even seen elements of this play out through a lot of the projects that we've done, where different communities will form around this, and they are speculating, and they're like, this might be worth a lot on the resale market. And I know there's a picture of a guy with a warehouse full of big red boots that he did not manage to unload.
Oh, no.
and I know, like, I had seen some of the screenshots of group chats prior to the big red boots dropping, and people were like, oh my God, like, I got my bots ready. I'm going to like get all these out. And they didn't know that we were going to unload a little bit. And so some people really got left holding the bag, and then all of his friends turned on him and said, you dumbass, which is so brutal.
But you guys have literally played into this. Like, speaking of sort of like people gamifying that, you have the sock queen into the hat guy,
That was so bonkers. I mean, there was this time a long time ago where we were so full of ourselves, we said we would never make merch. And so we created a loophole for ourselves where we said, well, instead of selling merch, we'll sell a monopoly to the merchant. Someone else can sell the merch, which tells you a lot about our personality, I guess. And so we had this design of a Mischief sock, sort of in the style of Costco.
I would argue very in the style of Costco. But
extremely in the style of Costco, like straight up in the style of Costco. But instead of selling one pair of socks at a time, we bundled them into a pallet of, I think it was 1,000 socks for $5,000. And the idea was whoever buys it first owns the supply. They control the market. Let's see what they do. This lady in Florida bought them actually before the drop release. Somehow I don't know, something went wrong. We were like doing a test.
Prematurely sold.
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
I think at like 2 a.m. the night before.
Wow.
Early days, still had some kinks. Anyways, she got it. And we were like, who is this person? And it turned, for the next week, we started seeing this account show up on Twitter, on Reddit. The socks were showing up on eBay and StockX. This lady was not internet native, but somehow she knew, and maybe it was from her son, who was the one who told her to buy these. She knew enough to create a Reddit account, find the Mischief subreddit, find other subreddits for like collectibles or hype or resell or whatever. She was sending her kid to school with the socks to sell the socks. And she ended up something like 3xing her money over the next couple of weeks.
It sort of seemed like it was actually like you couldn't have drawn it up better.
Oh, it's freaking wild. And then she started sending us these crazy emails of the dream she had last night where she was like a queen on a bed of socks and people were coming up to her to like give her offerings and she was tossing socks to peasants. And that's when we were like, maybe we don't talk to her anymore. And then we actually found her and interviewed her for our magazine.
Right.
So the whole thing is actually
that photo of her in the room with all the socks is pretty amazing.
So she was sending those to us unprompted, which was also quite uncomfortable because I don't know who lays on a bed of socks in that position. But yeah, and that's the great thing about these projects is you don't know what's going to happen. Like the hat guy that you mentioned. So we did the same thing with hats.
But it was a little bit after, right? So he had
it might have been like 2 years later. There was like a good chunk of
prior
time.
Work on the hat.
There was prior work.
Sock Queen.
There was lore. There was a result. There was documentation of the result. And the dude with the hats could not do it. And also you could just kind of tell like a little bit. They were both thirsty and desperate, but there's like different flavors of it where some you can kind of embrace and be like, all right, this is a little chaotic. And then there's some is just sort of like sad. Like you could tell she was having fun.
Yes.
Like she was a nut. This guy was like doing all I think he had a bot set up to like catch any tweet of Mischief and reply to it saying, buy this hat.
There are sort of different ways to be authentically a sellout.
Yes.
Or maybe just different ways to be a sellout.
There's an art to it, to be honest. And the guy did not nail it. He also wasn't being creative in the communities. I think he was just trying to like the equivalent of just standing outside saying, will you buy this hat? Will you buy this hat? Will you buy this hat? Somehow the lady actually nailed it. Wow. Yeah. She has no idea how good she was.
Okay, we're going to talk more about a lot of that, but I want to talk a little bit about sort of just culture today before we dive into Mischief's role. There's a line you guys have, I think from Lucas in the book, where he says, no one talks about the future anymore. Instead, everything accelerates the present to a fever pitch, intensifying and weirding the horrid idiosyncrasies and dysfunctions of the current moment. There's a hole where the future used to be, and all that remains is the increasingly spicy present.
I have no idea what that means.
Well, there's another line I think Lucas said in some interview. He said the present is spiraling more concentratedly in on itself, and sort of this like recursion almost.
No, totally. I do know where he's coming from.
Well, I guess my question is, obviously you guys have talked about this a lot. So have a lot of other people. Slow cancellation of the future. It's not a totally new idea. And I think like we all feel this. It's like, where is the new XYZ? I guess my question for you is, how real is that really? And maybe to get specific, I'm curious for you to reflect on either 2014-ish, when you really kind of first started the beginnings of what this was going to become with Miscellaneous Mischief, or maybe as another benchmark, 2019, when you guys formally started.
Yep.
Like, you produced a lot of culture in the meantime. A lot has happened But is the future really canceled?
I don't think so, but it's harder to see. And I think that's the big distinction.
Not as legible.
Right? It's definitely not as legible, and you won't see it unless you go looking for it, because we're at a time where you're just surrounded by the wrong incentive structures and the wrong formats that are going to immediately blind you to seeing beyond your own thumb, the palm of your hand, unfortunately. So back in 2014, that was a time where the news moved a lot less quickly. And that was also the tail end of an era of the internet where the internet had been around just long enough for mass adoption, but it wasn't so mainstream yet. So it was still an era where people shared things because they were actually interesting. Over the last 10 years, the incentives have flipped where people don't share things because they're interesting anymore. They share things to fuel their vanity. So instead of me sharing a link to something that's cool now, I'll share a video of me talking about a link that's cool now. And I'm not even going to include the link. You know what I mean?
It's co-opted. You know what's funny is you're talking about, I think the first project, maybe the first project was the chat bubbles, but the Twitter thing you did, maybe it wasn't even a Mischief project where you were giving bad advice intentionally.
Yeah. That was even before the iPhone bubbles. Yeah.
And there was, I don't know how intentional it was, but you were describing it and you said people started to comment on the product rather than engaging with it.
Yeah.
Which is the seed of this idea.
No, it was starting to happen, right? And we also picked up on those incentive structures, and we're like, okay, if you design an idea in a certain way, the media is likely to write an article about it. And then pretty quickly we found out that clickbait was an emerging format. So it was a match made in heaven. It was like media companies are incentivized to create clickbait. We can create projects that have an amazing clickbait layer, even if we will defend ourselves to the end saying that there are more layers to most of our projects, if not all of them. But there always is definitely like that sort of vanity-driven clickbait line, right? You feed the beast, and we co-opt media companies as a primary layer of distribution. And then as you get to 2019, 2020, media's really lost a lot of steam, but that's sort of the rise of the influencer and the content creator. And that's when you start to realize like those groups are the new media companies. They have very similar incentive structures, but also video is the prevailing format now, and it's quick, and that lends itself really well to physical objects. And then that opened up this whole Pandora's box of where you can go with physical objects. And that's why like literally behind you, there's cereal, there's electronic devices, there are collectibles, there are shoes, there are swords. Like
very specifically to objects that are amazing in person, back to the sort of their layers thing, but also jump off a screen.
Totally. And even down to how it's packaged, how it's unboxed, how much information people have about it, what they can tell about it, how unique it is to them so they can tell a story or a lie about it that creates some friction. I don't remember what the original question was, but this, the way that information is discovered and shared has evolved so much over the past decade.
Yes.
And I think the unfortunate incentives of the time that we live in, which is you are competing with everyone on the planet to create more and more content, to drive more and more views and get more and more engagement and get more and more followers, that we're all stuck like looking at our own faces now. And that makes it really hard to see like what's next.
Yes.
Or even to care about what's next. But I think that is a golden opportunity because everyone is stuck looking like 2 inches ahead of them. A few people will have the discipline to look 10 years away from now. And I think that is like, that's the magic opportunity now. Whereas I think Mischief's magic opportunity 10 years ago was we kind of understood how to work the organic distribution levers of the internet when no one else did.
But now that's table stakes.
That doesn't matter. And the value of it is increasingly just gross.
Yeah. I think you said this somewhere else, like, virality used to be a skill and now it's just shots on goal.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. And that's kind of cool too, right? Like there is good content that just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. TikTok in many ways is kind of the perfect version of this. It's like the true global talent show.
Totally. And you know, kids are being creative. I think that's cool. And creativity is democratized. And for folks like us, it forces us to have to reevaluate ourselves and also change our own game.
Yeah.
Or just call it quits and be like, well, that was a cool era, right? It's the world changes. You got to change with it.
Maybe on a related note, you said people create what their gods are telling them to create.
Damn, I said that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Nice. I think that's a really interesting idea in a broad sense. I think you were specifically talking about TikTok and Instagram. But I guess my question would be to go back to the maybe broader idea, like, are there other gods in this context? Is it really just like a few algorithms?
Yeah, good question. I think the algorithms are a very prevalent part of this. I think you are what you see, you are what you want to become. And unfortunately, I think there's not a good diversity of things to look at now. And that I think is not great. The other interesting thing too, and this is something that I haven't like fully fleshed out, but there are content creators across so many different disciplines. Like I was at a thing in LA this weekend for content creators somehow. And there was an electrician in the room who was a content creator.
Wow.
And that sort of kind of maybe pulled me out of my own ass a little bit, because he was looking at content creation as a complement to his like primary trade, which is super interesting. And so, I think we've all heard this thing about like kids used to grow up wanting to be like astronauts or firefighters or policemen or whatever. And now they just want to be content creators. But maybe there is like another layer of abstraction that could be coming where it's a way to document a skill or a trade, because hopefully the kids are going to want something that's unique and novel and interesting versus everything looking so the same. So I kind of believe it's going to balance out. And even though the algorithms are sort of like driving towards one thing, I do have faith in human beings getting bored and being able to spot out like a lot of sameness. And so in that sense, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's almost a notion, like going back to what we were just talking about, like the viral era is kind of over. Like it is also worth remembering, like we're like 20 years into this and really like 10 years into this, and it's still really new.
It's so new. It's so new. Everything is, it's like beginning stages, right? But it all comes down to some of the things that I said earlier, which is it's all about eating, sleeping, fucking, and flexing on your neighbor. It's also like human beings will always find ways to discover and share stories that resonate with them.
Yeah.
Like absolute truth. Like that will always be the case. So now the question is, what are the formats? What are the distribution mechanisms? I think an opportunity that more people should think about are we now have this opportunity to sort of zig while everyone else is zagging. If everyone is running towards quick, short form vertical videos, what can you do that's permanent, that's in the real world, that's like more tactile, more
or you
tangible?
can at least do a long 2-hour podcast with no video.
Or you can, amazing. That's so counterculture. It's great. We had this riff of an idea earlier of using, we were going to bring back Vine and use AI to extend the 6-second videos into long form 30-minute videos, which is, you're already on that wavelength. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Maybe one last thing on this that I was thinking about while you were talking is I can't help but compare the sort of people create what their gods are telling them to, and the like eat, sleep, whatever your line is. Michelangelo like made the Sistine Chapel because of God, theoretically. Maybe it was also flexing and whatever. I have to wonder if maybe that kind of like nihilism is one reason. Not to get like too meta about what motivates you guys, but like there is something, it feels like there's something sort of like bigger or more meaningful that you're pursuing, or like underpinning what you're pursuing. It seems to me that the people who, maybe a ridiculous example, but I always talk about if you compare Zuckerberg and Elon, say what you want about both, lots of criticism, lots of praise, whatever. I'm not sure what Zuck believes in, even though I think he's like much more responsible about a whole bunch of things. Elon, criticize him all you want. Definitely really believes in something. I would argue bigger than eating, sleeping.
Yeah.
And so, maybe whether it be capital G God or otherwise, that is one of the things missing.
Yeah. I mean, we see that in Elon because of his swiftness to make irresponsible decisions, right? and unashamedly so, right? The man has convictions in something that maybe we don't quite comprehend yet, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I hope there's more of that, actually. Again, say what you will about Elon, and I'm not picking a side on that. I'm just saying to create art, I think, is a very inherently very selfish act. And I think it's an amazing thing if people can embrace that and lean into it a little bit more.
Yeah, believe in something.
Well, you got to believe in something, right? And that's not a thing that's talked about so much anymore, because a lot of it is sort of audience driven, community driven. Like, what are you making for other people? Have you verified it with data? Have you done user interviews or whatever, right? But to really make art, don't let the crowd drag your vision down to the lowest mean. You know what I mean? Take the chance. And it could be shit, but it could be great. And that is, I think, always worth it. Yeah.
You guys make a lot of decisions by data here at Mischief, I'm sure. There's actually a huge data wall, but we just plug your brain into that.
We have data. We'll look at it, and then we'll be like, nah.
I think it's from Steve Jobs. There's some old line where he's talking about Google, and he's just like, yeah, you can explain the difference between us and Google because they A/B test 30 Shades of Blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about Mischief a bit. Cool. In many ways, you are in this perpetual conversation with culture, which is why I think it was important to set that backdrop. And in many ways, it's sort of to use almost like a religious term, it's sort of like being in the world, but not of the world. You're sort of able to see the water, but you're also you'll come down from the hill and play in the mud with everybody, which is a really interesting tension. Yep. Lucas said a couple lines I liked: absurd amplification of the present and reflecting back our time and just turning it up slightly. It's open-ended. What makes a good remix?
A good remix starts with good material. So you need a good starting point. And we use this term here, cultural ready-made, which is taking something that already exists and has a certain meaning in culture. You take it, you co-opt it, you appropriate it, you mix it up, turn it on its head, and you put it right back. To break it down into very pragmatic moves, though, I think one of the interesting frameworks that have worked really well at Mischief is taking a move from a certain industry or certain category and then applying it in a different one. And it just works so well because you solve that dose of novelty that everyone needs to have that sort of eureka moment. And then they talk about it and then they share it and they engage with it. And typically we will co-op moves from worlds that don't really talk to one another. One great example is we made a TurboTax competitor in the form of an anime dating simulator. And I don't know if it was the most viral thing, but it was the #1 game on Steam for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And 20,000 people did use it to file their taxes in the 2024 filing year.
Oh my God. How many #1 Steam games have you had? Because I think the Chair Sim was also #1.
The 2 games that we've done have hit top of Steam for a week or two.
Okay.
Whatever that means. I don't understand Steam at all. But that Tax 7 3000 was a great example of taking a move from one space and applying it to another one and creating something that when you see it exist, you're like, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of intuitive or obvious.
Yeah, I kind of get why this should exist. It makes sense, right? It's a free TurboTax competitor in the form of an anime dating simulator because when you do your taxes on TurboTax, you're essentially going through a questionnaire that mirrors questions that you would get on a first date. Anyways.
Was that idea, or I guess maybe are most of the ideas kind of like that, where it's presumably that idea when you see it on paper, maybe not, but when you see it on paper, you're like, oh yeah.
The good ones tend to be that way. And then there are totally other ideas where you're like, let's sit on it for a bit. We're not sure. And typically the process is when you have an idea and we feel like it's good, we stow it away for many months and then we revisit it later. And then if it still hits for us, then we will start committing resources to doing it.
Maybe on that note, you guys have talked about you're sort of playing with the meta of the present, but not what happened yesterday. Put another way, you've said Mischief doesn't win as a first mover. Yeah. Maybe capturing part of that. How do you sort of operate in the conversation, but outside of the current thing? Because in many ways, it is a little paradoxical.
No, totally. And then sometimes it becomes a current thing. And then I don't even know what my stance is on that. But that's sort of an amazing case when it becomes the current thing.
Right.
I always said like, and we've sort of had comparisons to Saturday Night Live where people are like, oh, you must have this like writer's room that meets every day to talk about what happened yesterday. But I say like, if you look at actually the roster of projects and works that we've put out, none of them respond to a current event that happened. And typically a lot of these things have some sense of not long tail value, but long tail comprehension, which is super important. And I think it's because it does use long-term narratives, long-term mechanisms, long-term tools that reflect generations is too long, and that doesn't apply anymore. But had mischief existed decades ago, it could have applied then.
Yeah.
Now, because time is shrinking and the future is accelerated to the present and all of that, like that window is a lot smaller. And I think the meta is moving a lot more quickly. So it's a tricky one.
Are you deliberately anticipating?
Not on like a what's happening tomorrow or next week sort of thing, but we are spending a lot of time thinking about, all right, now that the meta is moving so quickly now, right? Like what even is the meta right now?
Yeah, it's red cream race.
Like who knows? So we actually have to do a lot of soul searching to figure out what is that proper middle ground between the thing that gets us excited creatively and artistically, plus the thing that is pragmatic for us to be able to exist and maybe even thrive if we get it right. And that is extremely existential. And I would say Mischief was kind of existential when I started experimenting 12 years ago. It got a little more existential in 2019 when we formally got going. And then now it's just actually like the last year was insanely existential.
When you say existential, you mean philosophically or you mean for the existence of mischief?
Philosophically, but that translates to the existence of mischief because and part of it was, we used to celebrate, well, not even really, but like there was a time where we would go viral and it felt amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then, believe it or not, after enough times, you feel nothing. The good thing is we always celebrated before anything went out. So that was like a good habit that we had, celebrate the act of creation, not the response. But over time, like your excitement starts to wane, the novelty goes down, like the addiction to that drug starts to wear off. And that's when you have to pull your head up and be like, well, where do I find that feeling again? And where did it truly come from? Did it come from going viral? Did it come from learning new formats? Did it come from collaborating with good people? Like, where was the actual source of that excitement that gave Mischief the ability to exist from the beginning? We have to rediscover that because the world is so different. Like everything's so different.
It's interesting too because I don't know. There's lots of advice. Like it's like the classic Rick Rubin thing. It's like create for you, not for the audience. And I've heard you talk about that. I'm sure you guys really do embody it. My experience of you is very much like something close to an autotelic. Like we're creating for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And yet, for anyone, but maybe especially you guys, so much of what you create is, as we'll talk about, like not done when it's released.
Yeah.
It's actually explicitly, if not implicitly, kind of in conversation. And so that's a really fascinating question.
Yeah. It's
a fascinating thing to have to ponder, which is like what is this if I'm not really getting the dopamine from the external thing and from the virality, like, but what are we trying to say? And also, by the way, it kind of needs to go viral to, I don't know, there's a quote I found somewhere, I think in Maurizio Cattelan's like essay at the beginning of the book, he was quoting Sherry Levine, who I think was quoting Roland Barthes, but neither here nor there. A painting's meaning lies not in its origins, but its destination.
Yeah.
Which is like, yes, it's about like, I love to paint, but also like, how do you hold these things?
100%. It is a total mindfuck. And look, we always saw virality as a means of distribution to achieve a critical mass that could carry certain types of concepts to completion, right? That's all it ever was. There was also a lot of value in how powerful it made us look. behind the black box.
Yes.
Right? Like people couldn't figure out, are they 200 people or is it like one guy?
Yeah, it's a magician.
Right? Yeah, it was like that. We've been around long enough where I don't think the black box exists as much anymore, nor does it need to, because nothing lasts forever. We are fluid just like the world is fluid. And so we are certainly evaluating, like, what do we want from the work that we put out now? And what is the scale of the relationship with an audience that work is going to have? I actually believe that it will be very cool to spend the next 3, 5, maybe even 10 years engaging with much smaller audiences. It's going to take a lot of discipline though, because, we built this muscle for larger audiences, and with that came revenue, came a business model, the ability to hire a team. But like we said earlier, like the virality has lost its sheen.
Yes.
It's not as interesting. And the staying power of anything that goes viral is also like pretty rough. I mean, look at the Labubu guy now. He's like, his personal net worth is just tanked all of a sudden.
Did it?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he's like $6 billion less rich now. And
no way.
Investors are pissed because like the stock plummeted.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, damn, I know exactly how that feels. We did that with the big red boots, except I sold all of mine. And
didn't one guy has them in the warehouse?
Yeah, to that one guy. And like, I'm so not surprised, right? Like that's just what's going to happen. But when Labubu thing was happening, all the team and leadership investors were like, okay, how do we build Disneyland for Labubu? And like, how do you keep this going? But like the world just doesn't, like the staying power of these things, it's not as sticky anymore. And I think you can only really get staying power if you focus on a relationship with a small group for as long as you can possibly hold on, and then a little bit more. And then maybe you have a chance of something with like really significant staying power.
It's interesting to think about. If you're playing the game of spectacle, there's only sort of one path forward, which is more or bigger.
Yeah. And Mischief trapped ourselves in that own game. Like we built the game, we designed a game, we won it because we're a player of one. And then we essentially are trapped by the game unless we reinvent ourselves out of it. But to do that, we have to break a lot of our own rules, which I'm at peace with now. And I think is very exciting, but it was hard to get there.
It's interesting to think about when we brought up Elon, like this sort of having to sort of play to a bigger and bigger spectacle is not only the case in the art and culture world either. Like, yeah, I think it's a sort of rat race that everybody falls into.
It's just the invisible hand, man. Like it's everywhere. Like Mr. Beast has to keep doing it just the same way like Exxon has to keep doing it. Like everyone has to keep growing and growing and growing. But that's sort of one of the existential questions of Mischief, which on one hand is certainly an artist, but on the other hand is absolutely a business. Do we want to grow broadly or do we want to go deep?
Yeah.
And go as deep as possible and sustain that as long as possible. That's sort of the question. But also, I think the opportunity.
I think there's also just something, almost everything that actually reaches extreme staying power and scale, it has to sort of start small enough that it can actually have room to compound.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something that you are the two people I know who are best at this are you and Peter McIndoe, who you recently met, who created Birds Aren't Real.
Oh yeah, I never knew his last name.
Oh, there you go. And when I say best at, I guess I mean it's not quite this, but there's a interview with David Bowie in like the 90s where he's talking about the internet, and they're like, "This is just another technology thing," and he's like, "No, like this is an alien life form. Like the creator and the consumer of the content are going to be so in simpatico." You guys have talked about this in different ways. You just use some of that language, the audience carrying across the finish line. Somewhere, there's some mantra somewhere like, buckle up, this is no longer in our hands. Mm-hmm. Performance that makes the audience complete the work, not consume it. And to the point of what we were just talking about, this can happen in really big scale or really small scale. In Peter's case, like, I think it started with like, I don't know, initially he was like taping up Barbies around Arkansas. Yeah. And then like, so these things can start, but in many ways, what I would call the skill is sort of like, can you create some kindling that is going to fan into flame?
Yeah. Yep.
And in many ways, it's sort of like the most internet native way to create something interesting. I'm curious, like what maybe I think you guys have used the kind of all-encompassing language of like creating something the crowd can play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, regardless of scale, what goes into creating those types of instruments that a person actually wants to sort of like take and run with and make their own versus just like consume and move on.
Yeah, totally. A lot of it comes from a place of deception, which is kind of great. And for better or for worse, one of the early mantras of Mischief was never fall into the trap of building for your community. Because we like quickly got this big, passionate kind of fan base, and naturally a lot of the wisdom that's passed along from the business world is like, listen to your audience, listen to your fans, cultivate your community. And we were like, you know what? We're not going to do that, because the first thing you'd have to do is start repeating things that worked well in the past, right? And we're like, we're never going to do that. In fact, we're going to make things and you're either going to love it, or if you hate it, we're going to tell you to shut up, love it, and then you're going to love it even more.
Yeah.
And so that, look, it could be wrong. I think it's unique for different people and different groups, but it was good for us. And somehow the audience could feel the authenticity with that sentiment, and they fucking loved it.
Yeah.
Like the first product that we put out with that kind of mentality was our Blur collectible, which is essentially this like brick-shaped hunk of plastic rubber that looks like a stack of cash that's been blurred out with the blur tool on Photoshop. We thought it was really funny to put that on a website with a checkout button that says, pay to reveal. And so it's like there's a $25 checkout button with a blurry stack of cash on it, but what the end user doesn't realize is it is a perfect resolution photo of a real object. And we're like, this is going to be so funny, but also we're going to get so many chargebacks. We're definitely going to get a lot of angry emails. And so we like made sure we did this under a different LLC because we were going to get the chargebacks. So we didn't want that to affect Mischief's ability as a merchant to handle, like we did all the precautions knowing that this was probably going to fuck us, but it was going to be worth it because we had to like lay down the law. Guess what? It's one of the most highest performing collectibles on the secondary market. Like people, I think we made 1,000 on that first run of the US dollar, and people got it and they just ran with it. They started making so many different videos of conspiracy theories, and some people like broke theirs open and there were drugs in it. Some people ate theirs live. Some people like they just came up with so much lore that we could have never predicted.
Wow.
Got 0 chargebacks, like 0 angry emails.
Wow.
And then that ended up becoming sort of like a franchise in and of itself, ironically with no more meaning though, because the gig was up.
Yeah.
So then it just became an object that looked cool, which is interesting and totally fine, by the way.
It's kind of the half-life of most Mischief objects, I would presume. Like, at least most of them that hit some kind of escape velocity.
Yeah. Well, that's why this was interesting, because it hit at the beginning because of the gotcha, and then it carried itself on its own just because it was a cool looking object, which is not really a business that Mischief engages in.
Interesting.
But we ran with it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, it kind of works. And that actually has been seen in a lot of the things that we've done, which is interesting. So the Big Red Boot, for example, only made 300 pairs at the beginning. And when it really first started to pick up heat, it was in this sort of cool kids, avant-garde, like art design fashion crowd. That very like, if you know, you know, right? And then it started to really pick up steam and it started showing up on celebrities. Then it started to show up on content creators. And by that point, we figured out how to make like 20,000 pairs. So we sold a bunch of them.
Maybe atoning for the sins of the Jesus shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
No pun intended.
So all these content creators realized, oh, wait, this is a tool to get me more views and engagement. So the meaning of the object changed.
Wow.
From like,
I can go viral if I wear these.
Exactly. It became a tool, right? Versus at the early stages, it was a cool kids flex for the like cool art kids. Then it became a tool for the content creators. And so same object, completely different meaning, completely different value system.
I guess that's a lot of fashion actually ironically goes through that cycle.
Actually,
or maybe culture in general.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, we probably like compressed decades of fashion wisdom into one very hectic 2-week time span for myself.
It's funny too. There's all of these things are an invitation that the person willingly opts into, but you sort of subvert them on the way.
We're kind of making fun of you,
Right.
but you still like it. And that's okay.
Maybe on the note, and on the note of the boots, you make lots of objects, but you also make fashion objects and things people can wear, which not definitively, but to me at least feels a little different than something you can play or consume, in part because, yeah, of course there's going to be I can use this as a tool or status object, but like whether it's utility or like symbolism or even fantasy, costume, like fashion is somewhat tied to identity.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm curious how your approach changes, if at all, for things that people can actually wear and kind of put on themselves.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't change much. And so we didn't go into the mindset of, all right, there's an identity to design against, which in the industry, they call it the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then you create content around that lifestyle to sell the things that you're depicting in that lifestyle. We totally did not do that. And you can see that in just the wide range of different types of footwear that we put out that clearly do not work for one specific lifestyle.
Right.
So the way that I would describe that is one part conceptual practice, but many parts a design exercise, which is sort of this other part of Mischief that people might not realize, but we are some of the best designers in the world, like full stop, just across the board from like graphic branding, but also object design, material design, packaging design, web design. And I think it gets lost how good we are at it because you're thinking about the concept and the response and everything.
Well, many of these concepts are so loud.
Exactly.
They're so built to jump off the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's something that's interesting that opens up and you can be more subtle if you're playing to a smaller audience.
I think so too. And I think there's, part of my existential crisis is coming down to this notion of the act of creation and craft as maybe the solution for the thing that we were always looking for. Like maybe that was the source of that euphoric feeling we've had from the beginning, because the virality and sort of being able to control so much attention, like that wore off. But we still get the high from the act of creation with new formats that we haven't touched yet. Mm-hmm. We are also addicted to higher stakes and bigger ambition. So there is some risk there, but that's kind of what makes it fun.
I'm going to get a little heady for a minute, so you have to forgive me.
Let's do it.
There is a essay that came up a bunch as I was doing research that I think particularly is influential to your two creative directors, but is just a fascinating lens to look at Mischief, which is this athletic aesthetics blog or essay that Brad Trammell wrote all the way back in 2013. I would recommend people go read it. It's amazing. I wanted to read a couple of excerpts. First, he says, artists using social media have transformed the notion of a work from a series of isolated projects to a constant broadcast of one's artistic identity as recognizable, unique brand. That is, what the artist once accomplished by making commodities that could stand independently from them is now accomplished through their ongoing self-commodification. And then this has reversed the traditional recipe that you need to create art to have an audience. Today's artist on the internet needs to have an audience to create art. An aesthete's audience, once assembled, becomes part of their medium. The sort of metaphor that came to mind reading this is sort of like traditional art or production or creativity is sort of like creating a special meal. And this is almost like an IV drip of just like steady nutrition or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Two other excerpts. To maintain the aerial view necessary for patterns to emerge, one must cultivate a disposition of indifference. To be indifferent is to believe that any one thing is as important as any other. Social media anticipates and reinforces this attitude, presenting, say, news from Afghanistan and a former high school friend's lunch in the same format with the same gravity. Obviously, it's very 2013, but still representative. And then finally, caring too much about any one item to the exclusion of the others readily available now seems to jeopardize the viewer's ability to understand the whole. The fascinating thing about this piece that hopefully is captured in those quotes is like, Mischief almost perfectly straddles this with like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like you're sort of playing this really deliberately and very deliberately subverting it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, I mean, so much of what we were just spent the last 30 minutes talking about, but it's like this hyper online, ephemeral, like nothing lasts. We ship new things every 2 weeks. Like you are the athlete, but then you're also playing with ideas that are way more substantial and permanent and maybe even where you're going now.
That's kind of what we're trying to figure out is how do you not get trapped by your relationship with an audience? How do you maybe go to a place where the individual works can stand on their own? How do you go to a place where the individual works can stand on their own, even if Mischief's name isn't on it the way we started? And I think that's actually like the challenge that we've set forth for ourselves is don't fall into the trap now of what you might say Supreme did, which is now it's just put the name everywhere. And instead of a good idea necessarily, just put the logo on something and call it a day, right? Whether you like their move or not, I think it's totally fine. But for us, I don't want us to fall in the trap of just writing on the name that we've cultivated over the last 7 years. I would rather throw it away and create work that stands on its own. So how do we do that? Because then we're no longer trapped by the paradigm that Brad so accurately described and predicted like over 10 years ago, because it totally exists.
Like, and maybe it's most apt for people who haven't read the piece. Like it's really describing the modern content creator. But in some ways, it's sort of like, does Supreme even need the shirts?
Yeah.
It's actually like drop the product entirely is the way things seem to be swinging.
Yeah.
There's one other line from the Mischief book. When making things at high frequency, people remember the first thing they saw, the best thing they have seen, and the most recent thing they saw. Best and last both benefit from volume. How does, again, maybe you're moving away from it, but how does that articulation play into your strategy?
Well, it was really useful since 2019, because our business model was a cycle of reinvention.
Right.
So we were always iterating the best and the last. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
There was something always like we knew that just anecdotally, we would meet a lot of people who discovered Mischief through different points, right? So like they work in different industries or exist in different pockets or communities on the internet, and they all had different entry points. But then they would follow along and maybe realize that many things that they had seen on their feeds or in the news had also come from us. And some of those would be sort of like what they would rank as the best.
Yep.
And then, of course, now they're following us. So now they have a last, but we reinvent the last. And maybe we also reinvent the best. And so that's sort of how we looked at our relationship with our audience. We adopted a model where we're just constantly iterating on the best and the last, which was cool. That'll still apply to where we're going. It's just going to be over a much longer time horizon.
You've built this entire thing off of biweekly drops.
Yeah.
That's done?
Done.
Wow.
Instead of putting out maybe 40 to 50 new things a year, we might do 3, maybe 5. And you might not even know they were us. Like that's the truth. They will be a lot more high stakes and a lot more ambitious. Yeah. So ego death to reinvent.
I'm excited. Another topic that maybe verges into that, but maybe not. First, from Noah Smith, a very viral tweet. 15 years ago, the internet was an escape from the real world. Now the real world is an escape from the internet. You guys have obviously played in this realm. Big Art Boots maybe being a quintessential example of sort of like the merging of the hyper-real anime video game land. My friend Trevor McFedries, who made Lil Michaela, you probably know Trevor, he talks about like the New York City as like a sound stage for the internet today. And then finally, Sean Monahan again, thus is the rubric under which I understand Mischief. They have mastered the art of taking the internet and making it into real life. Does the internet feel like internet culture? I almost wonder if it's like a redundant phrase.
Yeah.
But like, do things feel as built around internet culture anymore? Or maybe part of what this new direction you're suggesting is like turning that off a little bit? Is internet culture even a helpful frame? Is it just everything?
No, I mean, I think, the internet, and I didn't come online until 2011, 2012. So This is kind of bonkers to even extrapolate on. But it seemed like the internet was this place where like real subcultures could kind of spring from nowhere, or you could find a subculture that worked for you. And it was sort of like this beautiful secret that you had with strangers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Niche at scale in a way.
Yeah, yeah. And now that doesn't exist online, right? All that exists
Or it's hard to find, to go back to your earlier
it's a
answer.
much,
It's in
much
some
harder
weird
to
Discord
find.
or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So the internet is, yeah, like what is internet culture now? It's hard to tell. But I think the advances in technology over the last 10 years gave almost way too much scale and access to these niche communities. And that makes them a little bit less interesting and a little bit less cool, right? Like you need some friction. It needs to be a little bit hard to find, a little bit hard to penetrate, hard to stay in, hard to be in. But when you find it and when it's good, it really matters. It's not really, is it an internet subculture or an offline subculture? It's just like, can the subculture exist and can it last?
And maybe does it have the time to kind of cultivate in the oven?
That's I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like, can new subcultures actually arise and stick around, right? Like there were the Dadaist movements and the punk movements, right? Like there used to be scenes.
Yep.
I don't know if scenes exist anymore.
And if they do, they're probably not on the internet. Or at the very least, they're going to be really hard to find.
Maybe they figured it out. Yeah.
Maybe on that final note, you've said when you see the herd running so fast, it usually means they're running toward the end of a cliff. You've talked about kind of creating a game where you're the only player. And then more recently, you said, what is the opportunity when everyone else is doing the same thing? And you suggested and sort of teased, I think the list was permanence, the real world, elevated craft, and secrets.
Dang, I said all that. That's great.
Again, going back to what we were just talking about, maybe the point is that you're not going to share much. But can you tease us, or can you at least talk about, maybe the best question would be, can you talk about what that might look like, or a game of only one looks like in a world of abundance?
Yeah, totally. Like practically speaking, we're not going to, like the most logical trap would be shelf life of virality has shortened, attention spans are shorter, increased drop production from once every 2 weeks to once a week. You know what I mean? Like that would have been the natural move, right? And also build a clipping team to create, to bring in a content creator who makes a video of the thing that you do and then clip it up and then push it out via like dark social, right? Yes. That's what the practical move would have been. And I reject that move. So instead, all I'll say is we have a theme parks division now. And that hopefully tells you nothing and everything at the same time.
I wonder if, it's funny, I have a question somewhere in here about, honestly, the next thing I want to talk about around world building. And when I think about world building, maybe most quintessentially, I think about Disney. Mm-hmm. And I almost wonder, like for Walt, it was literally, Walt's world building was quite literally, I'm going to take this thing that I have created across this constellation of stuff and make a physical place that you can visit.
No.
Yeah, I almost wonder if like, here we are lamenting where everything's going. It's just, the pendulum just swings.
Oh, it totally is, right? It's the kids are going to party again and people are going to hang out and, I don't know, seek physical thrills, you know? Yeah.
What makes place special to you?
Still trying to figure that out. But I'll tell you where I had that realization that it was important. Earlier, I think it was this year, we had a gallery exhibition in Tokyo, which, cool, Mom, like we're at Tokyo. That's great. And we had this opening where all like the locals were invited. So the cool Tokyo art kids, the scenesters, all of that. 2 observations. At the opening, great crowd, like thousands of people. There was a line, whatever, all of that stuff. What I really love about the crowd that I've seen at any Mischief in-person event is you have such a range of people, actually. So pretty even split across guys and girls. You've got some cool kids. You've got some nerds. You've got the tech guys. You've got law professors. You have families. You have the kids who stand outside of Supreme and are looking to resell stuff. You've got everyone, but actually the vibe is still amazing because it's clear that the common thread through all of those people is that they all esteem this idea of creativity as a personal value to aspire for. That is the common thread, right? And so even if Max, that event,
How about something to believe in, by the way? Go back to the top
there
of
you
the
go.
conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Like creativity as a value to aspire towards, I think, is a real thing and will continue to be a real thing. So let's say, maybe we had 2, 3, even if max 5,000 people, that's nothing on the internet, right?
Yes.
But it felt very significant. Funny thing, from the same show, there was a video on TikTok of one of the pieces that ended up getting 30 million views. And someone said that to me and it's like, holy shit, you're viral. And I felt nothing. And I can't really tell you why, but the crowd of whatever, 2,000, 3,000 people felt so much more significant than a video of my piece getting 30 million views. Like, who cares? In a way, it would be better if it never even made it on social media. Like, just let these 3,000 people cherish this forever. That would be great. And I think that's what we've been working on, rewiring ourselves here internally to reflect on our own work and our own path forward.
I also have to admit, or I would observe, whether you like it or not, there is something kind of beautiful in the notion that I have to imagine part of what made that thing go viral was that it came out of something actually real.
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely did. And it was literally just a video. We had this cubicle, like an office cubicle that you would see in like a typical corporate building, complete with a desk, Windows XP, computer, a printer, stuff all over the desk. But above the cubicle, where you'd typically have fluorescent lights, were fluorescent lights, but also a shower that was the size of the cubicle so that it's just constantly raining on the cubicle. At the bottom of the cubicle, we're collecting the water and pumping it back into the system. So it's a perpetual rain cubicle. And yeah, it did make a good image that would perform on social media. And it sort of ended up becoming a meme where people are like, this is me today at work or something like that, which was not what we had in mind. We just liked the visual and the artistry of it. But yeah, good things will continue to help people get the views online. And it wasn't even our TikTok account.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that calls to mind is just like, I always say, the best parties, like that a party sort of is inversely correlated with like the quality with how hard it is to get there. Or it's correlated, I should say.
Yeah.
Like the reason Burning Man works is just super hard to get there.
Yeah. The friction is valuable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's really valuable and self-selecting.
And then the other thing is, I love this example. This guy CT Nguyen, and he talked is a paper from a few years ago called "How Twitter Gamifies Communication." And one of the things he observes is when you post a tweet and it gets 100 likes, you have no idea what each of those likes contains. It could mean 100 people thought it was like incrementally interesting. It could mean 100 people loved it. And you compare that to a teacher in front of a classroom who says something, and 29 students' eyes glaze over, and one student's eyes light up.
Yeah.
And all that's contained in that, it's the equivalent of your 30 million versus the 5,000.
Yeah, totally. I would go to bat for that one kid any day now.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps what we needed to maybe the less cynical take was we need to like burn ourselves out on the like dopamine that comes from the hyperreal to sort of realize what we had in front of us.
And I think it will happen. I have faith.
One last note, at least adjacent to this, would be I brought up world building. Like, I think so many of the things I love, I would put in that bucket of world building, whether they're brands or IP or even people. Like, I would argue maybe the thing that is most impressive about Taylor Swift is her world building, and the way that it's something sort of to participate in. And part of that's the physical part of it. Part of it's she's so present. And like, whether you want to be cynical about that or not, you think about the Disney example, the classic Disney, like the diagram Walt drew. And I think people conflate that often with like branding and marketing and storytelling. Obviously, the physical part of it is one part of it, but I'm curious, and maybe you guys don't even think about it this way, but I'm curious to what extent you have anything in your mind when you think about world building and what goes into trying to do that well.
I think we accidentally started doing it. And retroactively, I'll say our approach was in opposition to the folks who are like, branding, marketing, like, create your campaign, do your out of home, show up on social, whatever, world building. Like, that's totally a style of world building. What we ended up doing in hindsight was we just relentlessly created new cultural output that was valuable to people, whether they spent their time on it or they spent money on it. And by doing that enough times, consistently enough across enough categories, we were able to monopolize a feeling that I think Mischief actually owns. And that's the world that we have. That's the world that we created. But we totally did not mean to do that.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things you have in the book is like all these values, and one of them is like almost like deliberately avoiding being cohesive. We're not a brand. We're just making, and yet there is some through line. There's some I know it when I see it.
Yeah, totally.
Or I feel it when I see it.
And that only came from just being really relentlessly consistent over a long period of time.
Consistent in what way?
Consistent in like every couple of weeks, there's something new.
Oh, just literally consistent.
Yeah, literally consistent, right? And the output.
Not on some mood board. Consistent.
No. It just had to be consistent in a timely manner. And fortunately, most things that we put out had the same sort of emotional quality.
Yes.
I wouldn't say everything did, but like most of it did.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the same way, perhaps to extrapolate, content that comes out of a physical thing or physical experience that people really resonate with, I have to imagine contains, whether it's something sort of trivial or utilitarian, or it's something more mystical. It's the Christopher Alexander, it's the quality without a name. Like whatever that is, it is sort of it's runoff from and in the case of Mischief's creativity, like, is it possible that the feeling is just something that happens in this room, in this building, that like gets packaged in there?
Yeah, totally. I think so, actually, because I've often described to people, and when I'm asked, like, what's the process? Like, how do you come up with these ideas? And, is there a framework? Like, what's the magic bullet here? And I tell people it's actually like an internal shared language, not too dissimilar from, let's say you go to a jazz club and at the end of the show, anybody can go up and just start jamming together. And so you get a bass player, a pianist, a saxophonist, and a drummer who have never met before, but they're starting to play and it sounds good, right? They have a shared language and they have mediums that they know how to make work together. And we're the same. It's not an incredibly new thing or a novel approach. We just happen to have a group of people who speak the same language and have access to resources, which goes a long way.
Thanks to lots of slaving away by Gabe.
Yeah.
You mentioned process. You guys have talked about this in a few different places where you have like in a way that would surprise people, a very rigorous and sort of almost boring process around creativity, and like daily, I think, scheduled brainstorms. It rhymes with so many creative people, maybe especially Jerry Seinfeld. He talks about like you lock yourself in the room every day.
It's a total drag.
It's like Jerry even says, find the struggle you can tolerate.
We call it the dark place. You got to go there.
Gosh. Well, maybe a slightly more optimistic question, but maybe that's part of the answer is, what has it been like maybe personally for you to train the creative muscle, to like actually feel that muscle? And maybe it's in the context of brainstorming, maybe it's more broad, but what does that feel like?
Yeah. It's a constant hunt for new inputs. Yeah. Like that's really what it is. It's new inputs, new insights. And then, we have this shared language that we speak here. So the ideas will come, but you need the inputs. So that is probably the most dynamic part of Mischief, actually, which is there is someone whose full-time job is to essentially create the equivalent of a collegiate curriculum. They curate all of these topics. Those are the inputs. In fact, these are all, behind us is a board of just like a bunch of random words on a whiteboard. That's from the topic mining that was happening a couple weeks ago, curriculum building.
You said topic mining?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just like, and a lot of them have nothing to do with one another. There's toilets, there's Eva and Franco mats, which are some interesting artists in Canada that it seems like we have a lot in common with. There's large scale land based, like it can really go anywhere.
Right.
The inputs are super important. Part of the value of being in New York is the inputs are very diverse too. A big thing here is we love public transportation. It's really important that people ride the subway because free inputs. It's so important.
It's a demanded or it's a required conflict with the other.
It's so critical. Like it creates tension, and out of that tension comes like new ideas, new perspectives. And then there's a little bit of work and training into how do you take that big vision and mold it into something that can be real. And then how do you create the strategy to put it out into the real world? And we built a process around that too. But I'd say it comes a lot down to the inputs for this group that has that shared sort of spoken subversive language.
Probably doesn't apply to most of the group, if I have to imagine. You, perhaps uniquely, grew up without a lot of inputs. Has that, talk about building a muscle, like, and maybe it helps to have a smart person here who brings you inputs, but has there been anything active around how you immerse yourself, how you find things, where you find interesting inputs?
I mean, that's why I love being in New York, because I have access to so many different worlds, and you can sort of match the categories that Mischief has a presence in to my own sort of thirst to acclimate to the world that I've entered.
Yeah.
And that's why, we entered the footwear space and the fashion space and the fine art space and the tech space and raised venture capital. Like we took a very sort of flat line approach to every element of culture. And now that we've exposed ourselves to those worlds and we've kind of co-opted them and maybe even infiltrated them, we're looking at other worlds that we haven't touched yet. We have done nothing in the world of real estate, hospitality. We have done no TV or video. We have not touched AI in recent, like the last 4 years. We've never done anything in crypto. Maybe now's a good time to do something in crypto because the herd already ran off the cliff.
And there's another. I think there's another. We'll see.
Good to know.
The current administration really loves crypto, so we'll see.
I'll go back
we'll see if
and
that's the
focus
peak.
on real estate or something. Yeah.
You're aging into a few of those, which is fun.
Yeah. Exactly.
And probably with your audience.
Yep.
Maybe it relates to what you just said. We talked about using time as a filter. There's a classic idea that like focus isn't saying no to bad ideas, it's saying no to good ideas. Yeah. How do you do that? Especially in I don't know if it's decision by committee, but it's certainly idea by committee world.
Yep. Yeah. There's no crystal clear, concrete answer to that, to be honest. It's kind of time and place, like what makes sense right now, but also what do I anticipate will make sense in the long term. And I think a lot of it got a lot simpler as soon as we narrowed in on what still gives us that feeling of euphoria. And
not having to do something every 2 weeks probably helps too.
That also helps. That was a beast. I mean, it worked, but that was brutal.
It is funny, just picking up on it worked. Like, I really think doing something every day or every week or whatever for a while is almost a guaranteed way for something to happen.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a sorry truth, but
no.
It works.
We were sort of hedging our bets. We were like, we know Mischief, and back in 2019, we know Mischief is something that's really hard to define and put in words. We know the output is also really hard to describe, and like it's difficult for people to comprehend. We're going to brute force this new category on the door and maybe like shift this Overton window to like a new type of subversive, interactive, experiential storytelling that's fueled by capitalistic mechanisms and the way people discover and share information online. No one's still succinctly defined a category for our type of output, but it totally does kind of exist. And there are examples of other players trying to use some of these moves, and that's cool. It would be cool if more people did.
About the drops thing, like maybe it came and went, but like that was
that was us accelerating what was already starting to happen. Fair. What we picked up on, like, that was sort of an emerging meta.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, if we can take that move and co-opt it and use it on other categories, that'll be pretty groundbreaking. Like that'll be kind of, people will stop and they'll just be like, what? And now everybody wants to do a drop.
Have you given up on the meta? Or is the new stuff
I just don't really know what it is. Don't really know what it is. And maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Maybe you have to see past it.
Yeah, if things are moving fast enough, maybe there's just a...
It's hard to tell.
We live in the age of the individual. We talked about that a bit. There are very, very few collectives or brands or things You've even compared Mischief to a band. There are very few bands, lots of solo artists. Mauricio Catalan in that essay I referenced earlier, he talks about Mischief's lack of authorship as lack of definite paternity, which is an amazing, amazing line.
That's hilarious.
There are examples of this, certainly, but even most bands, Lennon McCartney was rare. And something even more zoomed out is just everything was done by Mischief is even rarer. How does that, or how has that changed your relationship to the work?
The great thing about being what did Mauricio say, the indeterminate parent?
Lack of definite paternity.
Yeah. So, the great thing about...
By the way, this is the banana guy.
I know.
I know you know.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So this is the artist who taped the banana. I should have said it earlier.
Who actually has an incredibly long and rich track record of making really good subversive art pieces.
One of his earlier pieces, I believe, was that he taped a person to a wall.
Probably.
I think anyway.
The great thing about Mischief being the owner of the works, and not like me as an individual or anyone else here individual, is you remove a lot of ego from this whole process, and it keeps the culture here intact, that it can survive much longer than most places probably should have when you start to get the amount of attention that you're getting like us. So it was actually unintentionally almost like a protection agent to keep us intact from losing our own minds, versus the alternative is you start to get high on like your own fame, right?
This one really blew up. It was created by so-and-so.
And you get high on the access you get, right? Like what happens in any band when they become really hot? All of a sudden you're like turning on your family, you break up with your girlfriend, like go chase someone who was like a groupie. You start being bad with your money. Like all of these things totally could have happened, but because,
and they break up.
And
the team breaks up.
And then the team breaks up, right? So Mischief being this sort of kind of faceless, maybe not so faceless anymore, entity protected us from that. And in our heads, and maybe we're kind of full of ourselves, we like to think that maybe the Mischief experiment can survive beyond any of us. And that is kind of the dream, right? That maybe one day I'm no longer part of it, or I die, right? Like that's the natural course of things. Could it still exist? And that's cool. That's pretty cool. The other answer to this question is by not having an individual be any author of this, I don't have to do all the press interviews. Again, laziness is the root of a lot of our inspiration.
Years ago, we had dinner. This was a while ago. It's probably 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And I think you were in a particularly like tired or cynical period, perhaps. But you admitted that you were spending a lot less time on the creative side, if any at all, at least at that time. And you talked about how sort of your main or singular goal was creating this like space for creative people that like would preserve the earnestness almost, and optimism and hope and all these things. You guys have also used language in several places around play as a sort of underpinning of what happens here. How does that get fostered? You're several years later. You've continued to make it happen.
I know. I had to work on my resting bitch face. I mean, and when we had dinner, that must have been pandemic or maybe tail end.
Probably 2021 or 2022.
Yeah. At that point, it was sort of like, on one hand, you are like the current thing, but on the other hand, it's a fight for resources. Things are going wrong. Banks are shutting down. Our ships with our cargo from China are getting fired on by rebels in Yemen. Like, what the fuck is going on? Nothing. We just want to make a stupid TurboTax anime dating simulator, right? There is sort of this, I guess, internal like Jekyll Hyde thing that I still deal with, which is on one hand, relentlessly and ruthlessly fight for resources for the group here and then protect them from all of that bullshit. But then the other part is, how do you continue to curate the right people to think about the world in the way that works for this group? How do you keep bringing on the right inputs? How do you keep it from being stale? How do you find the thing that can give us that eureka feeling again?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the folks here have been here for years now, and
They've been around the virality block probably.
totally wore off, right? So how do you reinvent that? So I think a big part of it is just, and this doesn't sound so humble to say, but like a massive dose of humility in being like, it's okay to change, right? Just because this worked so well for a moment in time doesn't mean that it should continue working.
Yeah.
And rationally speaking, that makes a lot of sense, but it's harder to do when like you built it and it is sort of who you are and it's everything that you've got. So it continues to be tricky, but I've also found that personally, I love, like, maybe my art is the business side, which is carving out hidden opportunities and like unforeseen resources to combine in novel ways to then give this group the opportunity to make something completely unprecedented. And that part, I'm starting to lean in on a lot more, which is actually pretty fun.
Also just the opportunity to give a creative person like runway.
Yeah.
Or open pasture to say.
Let them rip,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I have a board meeting tomorrow. I'll get chewed out for like an hour and these guys will have...
You're the meme of the guy with the arrows hitting.
Yeah, exactly. They'll have no idea. No one here knows I have a board meeting tomorrow and it's going to be fine.
It's interesting. You were talking with Scott Norton on an interview and you brought up how doing that museum project in Korea, talking about new inspirations, like I think you had reflected that maybe especially in contrast to New York, which is like the most cynical place ever. Like New York is Woody Allen, whatever.
Yeah.
They both in that event and maybe culturally in Korea, they have more earnestness around commerce and creativity mixing.
It's crazy.
And it's interesting how even something like that can kind of rejuvenate this or heal some of the cynicism.
Oh, it totally did, right? Because, you know, prior to that, it's like, oh, you're going to sell out by making too much inventory, or you're going to do this collab like a sellout, or like you're doing too much stuff.
You made a shoe with Jimmy Fallon. Screw you,
exactly.
man.
Like you're a sellout. I'm like, oh, fuck, you're probably right. Why did I do that? He called. Of course we're going to do it. But then you go to Korea and it's just like unbridled enthusiasm for creativity in whatever form. And I was like, oh, that feels pretty good. Okay, I remember that feeling. Let me go back to that. And ironically, it's the kids who like brought that back to me and reminded me about that.
Yep.
So I came back from Korea thinking, all right, like let's channel that again. Let's not think so hard and let's just make the things that we want to make. Let's not listen to the critics or whoever, the original fans who say we have turned on them or whatever.
The first time that's ever happened.
Yeah, exactly. So that was very eye-opening. I'm really glad that happened. Yeah.
What does trust mean in the context of Mischief and your audience, if at all?
Good question. I don't know. We're probably reinventing that as we speak. I think there was definitely a case of most people knew that when we put something out, it would be generally worth their time and or money. There's definitely a group of people who definitely trusted that it would make them money.
Yeah, right.
And for a while, we listened to that a lot because the secondary market is a drug. And when you don't...
We had this in 100 Thieves, same thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, we didn't know about that world. Like, we fell into that world by accident. It's like, wait, what is going on? What are these Discord groups and what's a cook group and what are these bots? Like, what is
and it's really interesting canvas for all of the second order interesting audience stuff you guys like to do anyway.
So we quickly like learned about these mechanisms.
Playing that
how do we play with that? Which was also very fun. But yeah, maybe at the end of the day, my answer would be, it doesn't matter if there's trust or not, because we're going to go in a direction where the work has to just speak for itself, whether our name is on it or not. So it is kind of a big reinvention.
Not something we haven't talked about at all, but you just did this Made by Mischief book. And I think a lot of what we've been discussing is sort of like retrospective and reflecting on this. Actually, there's one more Trammell quote from that Athletic piece. He says, athletes' self-editing is now outsourced to the audience, who carefully pick over the barrage of content with unprecedented zeal. Their eagerness to assess and evaluate artists' work lies somewhere between being volunteer market researchers and a wish to bend artists to their will and democratize their art. Again, so much of this is, I think, less relevant as you move into a new phase, but you also have done you're with Periton, you've done multiple galleries, you've done the museum installation, now the book. To some degree, you're clearly interested in looking back and not only and narrativizing it to some degree. Yeah, I'm curious how, like, is that like we'll do this every once in a while and otherwise sort of not bother? Like, clearly some of it is up to the audience to interpret it, but I'm curious what your current relationship to sort of that context adding and reversal.
It also started in Korea, which was the kids came up and they were excited. And the reason they were excited is because they could now see a vision of the future for someone like them, where creativity can maybe lead to a lifestyle or a career path that isn't restrained by the current jobs that exist in industry.
Yeah.
And that was a very interesting feeling.
And also, it's not in some black box as much.
No, exactly. And so actually from Korea, we shed the black box. And that's where the book came from. That's where we have school groups come through here all the time. We're teaching a course at SCAD now.
Wow.
We do more like community events now. It's just, the other part is like, a black box is not that interesting forever.
Yeah.
Look at Banksy. Like eventually it becomes a meme unless you evolve it, right?
Mm.
And part of it is just acknowledging like we've been around for a minute, over half a decade, and perhaps the most defining half decade of our lives. Also, like we're not these punk rock kids anymore. I'm 35, right? My COO just had a kid, right? We were all in our 20s with no money and nothing to lose when we started this. And now it's like, okay, acknowledge our context, acknowledge our place within our context. And also just, we don't have to be so precious about the way that things used to be. We can take a more fluid approach to this. And so the black box is basically just gone. Like the doors are open. You send us a message, and if it's good, we respond. It's all open, right? The book it's a textbook.
Yeah,
it's a resource, right? It's
amazing,
not a picture book. It's a here is how we did this, like down to the science, right?
And then here's like, it's almost case studies.
They are case studies. They are just case studies. And then there's an index of every single thing that we've ever done, organized by different categories and other criteria. So that the Korea trip was a pivotal moment that lent itself to the book, that lent itself to opening up the doors more. And I think, again, that puts us in a place where we have no choice but to let the work speak for itself, because the black box is not going to do us any favors anymore. It's really putting our money where our mouth is. No more tricks, right? No more games. The work just will have to be so good.
Wow.
And we'll die on that sword. Like if it's not good, it's not good.
I also have to admit, or I should say point out, a great magician tactic is to put everything in plain sight. Wink, wink.
There you go. Yeah, maybe this is just part of a highly calculated PR tour.
On a super broad philosophical level, you talked about kind of a halfway mark when you left West Point, choosing this sort of undefined path, maybe in especially stark contrast to a group of people who are quite literally choosing war over uncertainty. Another line from you, I think, comfort and predictability are antithetical to everything we do and believe in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe layered on what we were just talking about. You've had a lot of opportunity to get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have in certain ways, and that's fine. But how do you stay original?
Well, the great thing is the world keeps changing and making us more uncomfortable. So it's kind of working out for us. But I think the other part is not choosing to go out of our way to seek comfort, right? Like making sure our incentives aren't set up in a way where we're just seeking predictability, dependability, rinsing and repeating. And we by the way, we've made all these mistakes. Like we've kind of fallen in these traps. But now it's like, all right, heads up, like eyes are clear. Let's do things that we don't know what the outcome is. Let's do things that we don't know how to do.
Honestly, maybe the 2 weeks drops was comfortable in some weird, insane sense.
It did become comfortable.
Right.
It started super uncomfortable, right? But then it became comfortable for us. It also probably became comfortable for other people, right? Like there was a novelty in just how relentlessly consistent we are, but then it's in the word, it was just consistent, right? So that also in hindsight was not destined to last forever. Yeah.
Do you ever get tired of novelty?
No. No. And we're constantly still looking for it, but it's just manifesting more in bigger formats, like different challenges.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is normal, right? Like I think anyone in any line of work or lifestyle is looking for things that stimulate them. That's like why you get up in the morning, theoretically. We're doing the same thing, just in our own way.
Yeah, it's funny how what novelty means can change a lot over time.
Also that. It's
almost definitionally, it's easy to forget that.
Exactly.
You guys launched Applied Mischief, or at least announced it.
Yep.
Which I think is sort of, obviously on some level, like a revenue driver and a consulting thing,
Totally.
but also an opportunity for maybe more scale or media or whatever. I think you talked about it a little bit earlier this year, but anything to talk about or share on that note, or is it still under wraps?
It's honestly nothing crazy, and it kind of falls in line with the thinking behind the book and teaching the class. It's just like doors are open. There's a team here that's really good at a particular thing that I think a lot of people want. So for the right people, we will do work with them.
What's the right people mean?
So it's definitely not category specific. It could really be any category. I think it's just people with a very similar sensibility who might already speak the same language we do or have the ability to learn how to speak the language that we do. And I would also say Applied Mischief solves a few internal, not problems, but it does a couple of things for me. One is there was such a robust operation built around that 2-week release cycle here that can now be reapplied to external partners. The other part is by opening up the doors to external partners, we're given more material that maybe we couldn't have as efficiently gotten on our own.
Or legally.
And now we have enough clout and leverage and name and track record to be able to maybe push boundaries with permission, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people think Mischief was always about like sticking it to the man and like punching at all corporations,
sort of
good
the
or
title,
bad.
but
yeah,
or the name, I should
but
say.
it wasn't. It was about using them as material to make new output.
Right.
That's the most important takeaway here. Adversarial can be it's a mechanism, but that wasn't like our reason for being. And so Applied Mischief, again, it creates the opportunity to give new material, new inputs and new material to the team. And that's a good thing, while they also can, like that Applied Mischief team can service the internal other enterprises that we're running, like the theme parks division that I'm being so cagey about.
You've sort of concretized a number of like more coherent and legible product verticals, shoes, handbags, stuff like that. And I don't know if you've used this language, but there are aspects of this that resemble like the sort of like European fashion house idea. I'm curious to what extent that's resonant, if at all, with parts of the business.
Yeah. It is starting to feel like that. It's starting to feel like a house of creative enterprises with a shared back office that is not just, finance, HR, legal, but also a creative back office, which is Applied Mischief. And so that is now a back office that's also revenue generating, which is very useful. And that gives us the opportunity to double down on categories that we've gone deep in that are meaningful. So we do have a successful handbag business. We do have a fine art practice with a blue chip gallery. And we have a few other sort of verticals that I can't talk too much about yet, but when you zoom out, maybe in like 3 or 5 years, it actually will look more just like a house, which is cool. It'll look like a house and still different from a house based on the outputs. But yeah.
What have you learned from Sarah Andelman?
Wow, that is a great question. It's funny because she is such an amazing person, and I'm not usually so sincere. But the thing about Sarah is, and I never knew about Colette, by the way.
Okay.
Never heard of it until I was introduced to her. And
Right.
then they were like, oh, she's a legend. You got it. She
yeah.
was Colette. And I'm like, what's that? Which is so embarrassing.
But I mean, you were probably like, maybe you were out of West Point, but you were.
Yeah, there's no way I could have known. Like, why would I know?
It's kind of a deep cut.
Yeah, it definitely is. So I met her, and she's like this cute French lady who like kind of dresses kind of quirky and seems to know everyone, and everyone seems to know her and adore her. But she is so excited by sort of like our brand of novelty, right? Like objects and, you know, creative experiences and creative takes on not just the fashion space, but like any space in general. And it's actually so inspiring because she was the top of the game for, who knows, like decades probably.
It was her and her mom, right?
It was her and her mom, and then shut it down, moved on, but continues to engage and be excited. And I think actually I draw a lot of inspiration and parallels to that moment of me in Korea, sort of acknowledging like, all right, I want to continue to engage and maybe like go deeper in a community and still be a part of this and like give back to it. Sarah Andelman changed Mischief's whole trajectory by being the person who introduced us to Emmanuel Periton. Prior to that, she had only ever made one introduction between an artist and Emmanuel Periton before. That was 2 decades prior. That artist was Brian Donnelly. That's Cause.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason that she did it was because I came to her and I said, we have this idea for an ATM machine with a leaderboard that ranks people based on how much money is in their bank account, but we really want to get it into Art Basel. I keep calling
no idea
them.
how.
No, I was like, I keep calling them and they keep saying, you need to be part of a gallery. And she was like, maybe you should meet Emmanuel.
Who's a pretty, like, I don't know that world well, and I suspect most listeners don't either, but he's pretty serious.
Top 5.
Okay.
Probably number 5 of the top 5, but he's up there. I'm still learning about this world too, but basically since, I don't know, 60s, 70s, there are a handful of art world power brokers who controlled the movement of money between the ultra wealthy into this asset class of like a Koons or a Hearst or whatever. Emmanuel is one of those.
Talk about different layers and metas and oh my gosh.
There's so much to unpack with that world. But Emmanuel is one of those people, but as big and powerful as Emmanuel is, it's like a global gallery with spaces all over the world, in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, now, and also the United States. He, kind of like Sarah, continues to be excited. And that's why it worked out so well. He was like, yeah, I'll do the ATM machine and let's do a group show, or let's do like a solo show. And then we did another solo show, and now our work is starting to show up in museums, which is amazing because that's permanent. So all of Mischief up until now was built on ephemerality, but now some of it's going to be part of like a permanent collection in very reputable museums. And in the past, that might have been seen as like selling out, like now you're a part of the institutions. But I think permanent documentation of things that we've done in the past that other people can access is very cool. So we are pro all of that happening.
It's cool to notice this pattern across both of the people and just broadly of people who are still excited.
Yeah.
I always tell the story. Elton John came to USC when I was in school, and like it was cool. He performed whatever. He's kind of old, but it was still cool to see him. But the highlight of the whole thing was he was talking about Lorde. And this is like 2012, and he's like, guys, it's amazing. There's this young artist and she sings about getting on a plane for the first time. And that was the part that he got most excited about.
That is incredible. And I think what I take away from that, and I've started to realize a lot more about this in the last like 18 months, is that now that I'm 35 and we're entering the second half of the decade, I'm thinking more in 10-year, 20-year increments. Up until this point, I was really thinking year by year. But now, like, I've been in New York City for a decade. I've been doing Mischief for over a decade. Now I'm really acknowledging that it is a long-term game. Like, this is a long haul. And I'm really inspired by people who have already had success, multiple scales larger than my own, and they're still excited. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I hope to be entering my 40s and my 50s still excited and not like too high on my own supply, if that makes sense.
It's a sort of there's a lightness to it, but there's also a sort of settling into yourself or the thing.
Yeah, for sure. Which also is sort of like why you see the most disruption coming from young people, because they're not settled yet. They're angsty and they're willing to experiment and take risks. They have nothing to lose.
Yeah. But it's also rare that they do things that are as substantial.
Also true.
Like, yeah, man, it is really interesting to think about, like, the longest time horizon you even hear people talking about is 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And like, what could you do if I was just up near Woodstock in New York, and I went to this like quarry that this guy made. It's called Opus 40, I think. And he spent 40 years like digging out this limestone quarry. And you're just like, what even opens up when even if you just say like, let's not think on a 1-year time horizon, let's think on a 5-year time horizon, like what now is in play?
Yeah. I mean, it changes the whole game, right? Like it changes the type of relationships you choose to have. It changes the way you invest your time and your resources now. Like, are you working on the current thing or are you working on the next thing, right? It changes a lot for me. It also gives me a sense of security because now I invest in relationships that I count on having for the next 2 decades, if not more.
Yeah.
Which is comforting. But then there's a
little bit of freedom through that kind of commitment.
There is, right? It's, it makes your world bigger, right? And now I'm in the headspace of how can I do things now that make my world bigger? And there's a sense of longevity in that statement as well.
It's really cool. One other miscellaneous question I had that is hilarious to ask and follow up to that is, I think our mutual friend Blake Robbins, he said you have this take on Buzzfeed that it was actually like the right strategy and that it was like in the wrong economic environment. Maybe I misunderstood him.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe you have a separate reaction, but I'm curious for either of them.
Oh, man.
How long did you work there, by the way?
I was an intern for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
While secretly doing Mischief projects.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I don't remember saying that necessarily, but I know that if you look back at Jonah Peretti's history, he actually is one of our predecessors.
I saw the Nike email.
Yeah. He was doing like very interesting sort of culture jamming objects or moments that could be distributed through like virality, but true virality back then, like shares, not
right.
Like real. Back then, it had to be so good that you couldn't help but share it with 5 to 10 other people, and that's when actual viral things happened. And so I understand what he was going for, which was how can you create a platform for this? How can you build a business around this, which essentially is taking this notion of a mechanism of how people discover and consume content, and then also take advantage of the ways that people also share it. And that led to, the listicles, right? Amazing format that...
Yes. Yeah, the medium is the message, just like recursively on itself.
It was so easy to create and so natural to share.
Yeah.
But what happens when there's too many listicles? It doesn't matter anymore. And then also like you lose control of your distribution with all the platform, like all of these things I totally understand because we experienced on probably a smaller scale, but we totally experienced them.
You know what he's doing now?
He's still running it.
Really?
BuzzFeed still exists.
Wow.
And I hope he figures it out. I really do, because he's done the long, like he's dug in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe there's a collaboration there someday.
I would be so jazzed to work with him personally. I don't think Mischief and Buzzfeed makes sense, but it's also the thing of he chose the business model of the day, which was media and advertising. And we just never chose a business model. So we are not stuck. Doesn't mean we're secure, but we're not stuck. You know what I mean? Like, we still have options.
You can't pin me down. I will never.
Right.
Okay. As we wrap up, I have a list of things I pulled out of at the beginning of the Mischief book. You have like, and I don't know if they're even in the handbook, but you have all these like one-liners and ideas that I think Lucas and the other Kevin wrote down. And I would love to like speed run just like if you don't have a reaction, you don't have a reaction.
These are probably from our employee handbook.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's my favorite thing in the book, and it's just accompanied with some amazing visuals. Importance of an adversary. We talked about this a little bit, but if you don't have an antagonist, do you have a point? And always punch something, never punch down.
Yeah. Continues to be true to this day. Super important.
I love the always punch something, never punch down is a really good framework.
Sometimes punch sideways. Like it can happen. And that's okay. That's where you learn. That's where you uncover new territory.
Have you ever punched sideways and then realized after you were totally punching down?
I mean, probably. I don't remember.
It's okay.
Probably.
You live and learn. Yeah. Mischief ensures its ideas are not pre-constrained by execution.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Continues to be true. We have to do a lot of work when we have an idea to make sure that the production mindset doesn't get in the way. Because honestly, what we've learned is if you want it bad enough, there is a way to make it happen. There just is, right? Now, eventually you have to figure out, am I going to cross that line? But there is a way. And good ideas are often limited before they're fully even formed by the production saying no, right? Like, give yourself the chance to like break some eggs and make some people uncomfortable, because the idea is fluid. Like, the ideas are never done until they're out the door. At least give yourself the chance to like let them
see what happens.
Yeah.
Death is just as important as birth. And then Mischief has a plan to burn it all down. If you don't feel the liberty to burn it all down, are you really free? And finally, my favorite, we can't cease what we're no longer doing. We can't desist from nothing.
Oh my God. These are so great. And they continue to be true. They continue to be incredibly valuable. You know, the death thing is actually really interesting, because on one hand, typically when we're thinking about an idea, and when anyone thinks about an idea, they're like, okay, what is it? What is its form factor? And how does it enter the world? But no one ever talks about how does it exit the world. And for a lot of ideas that we've put out, there usually was a exit strategy.
It was built in almost.
There was a death strategy, right? The most obvious one being like a lawsuit, right? But there are other ones too, like our PT Cruiser with the 5,000 keys. The death strategy actually is just the crowd will figure it out, right? And it gets towed 9 months later in Truckee, California, whatever. But on a more like macro existential level is, what is the death of Mischief, and how do we make sure we're not afraid to go there? Whether we go there or not, the courage to go there actually allows us to go into this next phase.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like the being okay with it all going away. Honestly, the coolest thing that Mischief could do right now is just like disappear for 10 years and then come back. That would be amazing. I can't afford to do that.
Yeah, that's
too comfortable.
That's the problem. Don't make future trash.
We said that?
That's in the book.
Fuck, we have made so much trash. Interesting. Don't make future trash. I don't even know what that means.
Maybe something to come back to.
Yeah.
Not a pithy line, but I love this. Mischief as a practice and as an entity manifests the ambition for creative work / a creative entity to wield tangible communication power, competitive with the cultural power held by global companies, celebrities, and media entities.
Yeah. That is the whole reason that Mischief exists. We realize that because of the internet and because of the distribution mechanisms allowed to us, that an idea can have the same competing power as Kim Kardashian or the United States government or Lockheed Martin, right? Like we live at a time where that sort of
Playing field is
access and
level.
exactly, right? And you see that with like content creators and cable news network, right? Same thing, the playing field is level. So it's such an opportunity to be able to apply all of those tools that are typically only afforded to global corporations and celebrities to ideas.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of the idea too. No other ulterior motive. Like maybe, sure, it makes money, but like not enough to be significant. It's just, making the money for a lot of these concepts is just the culmination of the concept coming to life. And yeah, we're still just kids playing with tools that we don't quite know how they work.
It captures something interesting though, which is you're sort of both taking yourself seriously enough for this to be possible and not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah, that part's really fucked up. Again, it's that like Jekyll Hyde thing of like, I have to wake up and have a board meeting tomorrow, but then come in and brainstorm whoever knows like whatever we're
Go to the dark
brainstorming.
place. Is that what you called it? That's hilarious.
That is, you don't go there often, but when you're like working on a problem, you have to like really kind of go there.
Yeah.
Which is rough, but it works.
We are not pranksters. We are not making stunts. A stunt has attention as its end goal, while a prank has no goal beyond fooling someone else. And then humor is a tool to get people to engage with a point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, humor is such an amazing tool because our brand of humor is really it's in the eye of the beholder. And that creates attention because some people might not find it so funny, right? Like the Jesus shoes, a lot of people found funny. A lot of people were brutally offended. That
probably a lot of people who liked the Jesus shoes and really didn't like the Satan shoes, by the way.
Also true, right? And so humor was the wedge that like created the opportunity for those things to exist. But obviously it's so subjective, and that created a really valuable tension that ended up being additional layers of distribution for us, which is great. For pranks and stunts, yeah, my take on that. Whenever we qualify an idea at Mischief, we say it's got to slap in one sentence. It's got to slap harder in 3. Pranks and stunts are typically 1. Ours are usually 3, if not 2. Very rarely 1, if ever. A lot of people.
Are there any that are 5 or 10?
That only happens when the crowd takes it and turns into something else.
Yeah,
the Big Red Boot ended up becoming that. Even though for us, we're like, you can't write a manifesto around this. It's just like a cool looking thing.
Yeah, it might even be 1.
Yeah, honestly, right? We were like, it's an interesting looking thing. But then it just became so many other layers. Like that one is a 5-liner if you really, really dive into it.
It's interesting. I mean, I wonder if there's a lesson there that like, can the modern world even tolerate a multi-order thing? Or like, if you're really going to have it go the distance, it sort of needs to be intrinsically pretty simple.
Yes, for any sense of meaningful scale.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. If you are 100% credulous, everything ever made is art. If you are 100% cynical, everything ever made is advertising. Yeah. That's a banger.
And my response is yes. All the above.
This is hilarious. Mischief attacks golf as a way to attack all the nebulous concepts attached to it. And then sample the thing that signifies culture larger than itself. For example, golf. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff just about how much you guys hate golf.
Oh my gosh. It's so look, there's definitely a 3-line explanation to the golf, but I actually prefer to live in the world of the 1-line explanation, which is just golf sucks. And I leave it at that. And it's so much funnier to me that way. Sure, it's like a waste of natural resources. It takes up space. It's an activity reserved for the elite, whatever. All of those things are true, but it's just way funnier to just dunk on golf for no apparent reason.
Well, because a lot of people really love it. A lot of different types of people.
Really I know. This is just this is our nerdy revenge from being shoved in the lockers in high school. Like,
Now, you Brooklyn losers would hate golf.
Now we're gonna pick on golf. And pickleball will be next.
I think pickleball is plenty picked on. If you build it, they will come, bad, versus build it where they are, good. And then a subpoint of this is using quote unquote real infrastructure steals authenticity, authority, and credibility.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way to look at that is in the early days, we rejected this idea of creating art that should only live in a white wall gallery because one, the context there doesn't really exist. And it's this other notion of like you're assuming that people will just come to you when the opportunity is to like go to them. We are so obsessed with this sort of Trojan horse practice of hiding in disguise of the cultural ready-mades and then reinserting them back into the systems that we are critiquing from the start.
Yes. And the people who are buying it are probably part of, they're sort of the butt of the joke.
I wouldn't say butt of the joke, but they are part of the performance, right? And whether they're the butt of the joke or not is actually up to them, right? Talking to one another.
Right.
For us, we
Are
are
they making fun of us?
Yeah, we are an indifferent arbiter, right? Like you are what you are.
Sometimes it goes the other way. I was reading about the baby shoes, like, which were clearly, trying to do one thing, and then they were like beloved by this like adult baby fetish subreddit.
That was so weird. So that was like a design exercise in playing with this idea of scale. Like baby shoes are sort of like weird proportions. What if you make it bigger? How weird does that look in photos? So we're like, let's make sort of like this playful kid shoe. And man, we have a very passionate
the internet is big
fan base of furries and adult diapers.
That's another version of the second order not being designed.
No, totally. And also fantastic. It's great. Like the fact that the people in the theoretical mischief house party or the mischief high school cafeteria really has
world building, by the way.
Everyone, right?
We don't make fiction. Getting people to act on quote unquote real systems is more powerful than getting them to act on constructed ones.
Yeah. I mean, that simply just lends itself to us making real things, right? It's one thing to create, and I'm not talking ill of any of these formats, but a lot of art or storytelling comes through the formats of a painting or a song or a poem or a film or a television show or whatever. These are one-dimensional communication pathways.
Yeah.
Versus
also I have an idea in my head about what a film's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly, right? And and also the context is missing from those experiences. Those are all great formats and people have done really good jobs with them. The opportunity that we saw was let's just do the thing. Let's just make it real. Let's seize the means of production and put it into the market and see what happens.
There's some lines on this. Make work that doesn't wink and doesn't blink. Don't give people an easy out to take it less seriously. Soylent could have been a speculative artwork. Instead, it's real.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you know what? It took me so long to come around on that Soylent line because the guys had been saying that for years, ever since I first met them. They're right. Like you could have done it like a small batch, or an artist could have like lived off of it as a performance for 20 years and documented everything and like had a video and then done a gallery show of like, I lived off of this powder.
Instead they just made it and they sold it.
Instead, it was a business. It was a company. They put it out into the real world. And that's kind of rad. That's cool. Regardless of whether or not it was successful, they did the thing. And that's an aspiration that we continue to harness in a big way. Like, do the thing.
SoftBank WeWork EBITDA slide is speculative fiction. Same thread, obviously.
It's just a great slide. It comes up so much around here. I don't know why, but part of it is also just like, if that's how the rest of the world operates, we're not even being crazy enough.
Wow.
You know, like the bar is so high.
Masa.
I know.
The GOAT. Just a couple more. Knockoffs are reposts by the market. Real and fake are made in the same factory.
Yeah.
Kind of self-explanatory.
I mean, all true, right? And so we think knockoffs are cool as long as it's acknowledged as a knockoff. If it's someone taking something that we've done and then claiming that it's an original from them, not so much. This is why actually we had to be okay with the idea of people creating NFTs of our works and making money off of them. Because they weren't trying to pass it off as an original. They were just creating NFTs. They were remixing the format of the thing that we did. And in that sense, it was kosher.
Well, yeah, and in many ways, the Hirsch thing is like as close as you can get to blurring that line anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then the real and fake are made in the same factories. It's just a true insight, which is very funny. And so instead of like fighting these dynamics, maybe you can use them as material. And that's another place that we got a lot of excitement from.
Don't invent constraints for yourself when you don't need to.
Damn. I feel like we're in a position where we need to, so I am inventing them. But it kind of goes back to the production question earlier, like how can you avoid creating unnecessary roadblocks for yourself to see where an idea might go?
Yeah.
Because everything is so fluid and so dynamic.
Yes. I talk about this in a much lower stakes, but like you plant the seed. Don't like look at the seed in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And you don't know what kind of seed it is.
Yes.
It could become so many different things. So you just gotta let it ride.
Mischief doesn't make content. Mischief operates off platform.
Yeah, I mean, it continues to be true. We never invested in making content for the platforms. Like we do have an Instagram. We rarely post on it.
And it took a while.
And it took a long time to even get to that point. I think we have the TikTok handle, but I don't know. I don't even have TikTok on my phone.
Maybe that's the novelty. Maybe it's Gabe's TikTok.
I know. We have a Twitter account. We don't really use it. I don't think we even have an audience on Twitter, not at least on our handle. But it was important for us to not fall in the trap, kind of what Brad Trammell was talking about, which is all of a sudden it's not about like the individual works you're putting out. It's about the relationship between the audience and the content that you make about your works. And we were like, let's never fall into that trap, because when you fall into that trap, you're going to start changing the works to like better fit the format. And that's not going to go anywhere. So we continue to make things that are very explicitly off platform. The great thing is, because of the world that we live in and the internet ecosystem that we're a part of, other people make the content for us. So it works out.
Maybe there's a real world, lesson in the fact that the real world is definitively off platform.
Yes.
One last one, make it shitty. Aesthetic populism communicates effectively. Funny to think about it in the context of the conversation earlier about craft, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive necessarily.
Yeah. It's funny because when Kevin and Lucas first started building the design team here, somehow we stumbled across amazingly talented, just truly brilliant designers. Not many of them. There's just like a small handful of them here. But I remember in some of their first work at Mischief, they were so confused and even frustrated with Kevin and Lucas, because Kevin and Lucas would say, it's really good, make it shittier. Like good design will forever just be good design and no one will remember it. But shitty design, maybe people actually remember that. So it comes down to this thing that we talked a bit about earlier too, which is that herd might be running and maybe they are running towards the end of a cliff. Maybe they're not. But there could be value in just going in the opposite direction. And then maybe that herd will like look up and be like, where is that person going? And then they're going to start following you, right? And then you like run with them a little bit, see what they're doing, and then you reverse directions again.
They're just following you around.
I mean, yeah, in a way, this whole Mischief experiment is an incredibly Sisyphean struggle of just like zigzagging around.
Yeah, you can't catch me.
And at a certain point, you have to ask, like, is the herd chasing me or am I chasing the herd?
There you go. One last question. Those ideas I just listed, many of them are in some way like Mischief values.
Totally.
You guys are also very pragmatic. I think you're very opportunistic. You have, it's hard to pin down. It's not super legible, but you are principled in some set of ways. And in many ways, those values like are this flexible frame for the people here, past and future, to like look through and work with. Mm-hmm. You also say nothing is sacred. That's like one of the big values in the book. And then one of the other phrases in that book is change anything that stops being helpful. So my question is anything sacred?
No, nothing is sacred. It's a mindset. It's a lifestyle. You have to just be ready to go anywhere. Pull yourself back if you go too far, but be prepared to go there. Safe space.
Thanks, Gabe. This was great.
Awesome.